Hi, it's Maria. This is another one in Maria Unfiltered. So you're going to hear stuff that you might not have heard before. But anyway, today I wanted to talk about soul purpose. And sometimes you realize that our soul purpose is actually so different than what we thought it would be. And it's so shocking. I just want to make sure that the volume is up. Okay, so we'll see. Okay. So anyway, it's kind of like the agenda of our soul, the purpose of our soul, like why are we here? And it might be different than why we think we are here. Some people think that they're destined for greatness, but other people think, oh, well, that's not me, of course, because I just awaken every day and get my kids to school and go to a job that I now do from home. And then I run to the store and I cook and I clean and I do laundry and I look at YouTube a little bit before bed and do emails. And so people think that that's their life. And then they climb under the covers and they're just so glad to be there, and they can kind of pretend that they're somewhere else. Yeah. and then they do it all over again tomorrow. So in previous videos, in those Playground of Your Soul that I have put on my website, mariahaiti.com. Well, anyway, I talked about Henry David Thoreau, who happens to be one of my faves. He wrote Walden Pond. And so he so succinctly captured the human condition in his quote that you've probably heard of it. It's wonderful. It's men lead lives of quiet desperation. And it's true because he was just bang on with that one. So many people are just, they don't know their soul purpose, and yet they want to be contributing to society and to humanity in general, but they just don't know what it is that makes them so special. But what's interesting is that, of course, they're special because everyone on this planet has a certain gift that they are to give the world. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on this planet and they wouldn't have taken up space here, right? Another soul would have incarnated to take their place. So we're more than just hamsters on a wheel, even though we might think we are. Oh, the heater just turned on. I hope you can still hear me. Anyway, sometimes soul purpose is different from how we would think that that's the gift that we have for the world. Sometimes we are pushed to face obstacles that might have us grow in ways that we would have never imagined. Sometimes situations are destined to happen, and it's for our soul expansion, so that we become more of who we really are. And those situations are needed so that we can awaken and we can grow as spirits, as souls, as beings, as light beings. Anyway, here's an example. For instance, if there's an Olympic skier, and what if she's skiing down a mountain and she loses control and hits a tree, and she becomes injured and she has a spinal cord injury. So perhaps her soul purpose was not necessarily to be an Olympic skier, but rather that accident allowed her to kind of take a different path. And so she's now, let's say, going to different schools and talking to children about the safety of that one needs, the exercising of care and safety when one is doing any type of a sport. Or maybe she's talking to people with spinal cord injuries and giving them a boost and a lift of how that sometimes is really the beginning of life for some people. Their tragedy, whatever that might be, can be used for good. And so we all have opportunities, and sometimes we view them as adversity. And so it's not really what it is actually. I think it's really how we handle ourselves in all of the situations that we face. For me, I never thought that my soul purpose, and we can always think we have it right, but sometimes it's just so obvious that it just smacks us in the face and we're like, oh, okay, I get it. I never thought my purpose was to become a quintessential defendant and to show how broken our legal system really is. I was the person, the quintessential defendant is the person who sued over and over and over again. And I was sued by the same person, an ex-husband, but anyway, that doesn't really matter. But it became so ridiculous that I would have had to have been totally unconscious, not to realize that my soul was screaming for me to do something about it, not just to slough it off and say, oh, well, he's wounded, he doesn't know any better. But oh my gosh, and I went to law school and I had 3 children while I was there. And I quit actually when my 3rd son was born because I just thought, no, my joy was in being with my family. And also, here's something, I realized I'm a horrible liar. And oh my gosh, I am just the worst. And so I couldn't defend people who were hurting others. If you're killing people and you're robbing them and you're raping them and you're scamming them and you're perjuring yourself and you're forging signatures, I'd be rolling my eyes to the jury and I'd say, oh my God, you do not want me defending you, because I wouldn't do it. And I wouldn't give them an alibi. I wouldn't use your alibi saying you were in church that day. I mean, I just couldn't do it. Law was not for me. It was great training. It was a wonderful education. And I learned so very much. But I also learned what I didn't want. And so sometimes that's what we learn when we engage in any particular endeavor. But because our personalities don't change. And so even in my marriage, I couldn't sign a tax return that I knew wasn't exactly right. Whoever was preparing our taxes, and my ex-husband would say, here, sign this. And I'm like, well, no, I wanna understand it. And he's like, no, you can't just hurry up and sign it. You'd have the, the ignorant spouse excuse. Yeah, we have to be true to our soul. And no matter what, we just can't be pressured into things that don't feel right. Part of the quintessential divorce thing was that finally I said, after 16 years, I said, I have to get a divorce. We didn't really ever get along. And so it should have happened like the day after the wedding. But in any event, I think I've talked about that in some other videos. When I said, look, you can take all the money, you can, just take everything, I just want the children. And so that's when he said, well, if that's what you want, that's what I'm gonna go and get. And I thought, oh, Maria, you should have just kept quiet. But in divorce, what I saw was that, boundless greed, and it's all about trying to defame the other person, to prove them that they're a nut and a slut, or to prove them that they're a cheater or a child abuser or whatever. And so it's not about 2 people just separating. It's about 2 people trying to destroy one another. And if it's not 2 people trying to destroy one another, it's 1 person trying to destroy the other. But in any event, it turns into just a debacle, and just it's gross, really. And so and then the custody fight is a distraction, really, because a lot of times when there is a lot of money at stake, the attorneys try to stretch it out, right, for years and years. Mine lasted 5 years. And during that time, I think there were like at one point 30 different attorneys involved. And I mean, that's a joke. I mean, that's insane. It's actually criminal. But you see, what happens is that then there's a custody fight. And so you spend like 3 years trying to prove that you're a wonderful mother and everything. And then there are shrinks that come to your house and say, well, that the children's sock drawer was kind of a mess, so maybe she's not a great housekeeper or a great mother, or just stupid things like that. And so the children are really used as pawns in a game of one parent expressing their rage, like abandonment rage, like this war between 2 people. But the tragedy of it is that the children are just pawns. And so, and it doesn't end after, while the custody trial is going on. What happens is that it's a distraction, because What really is going on is that the money's being moved around, and the money's going offshore, the money are in different accounts, and things are being moved and closed and opened in other names and in other countries, and things like that. And so it's a joke. I mean, it's a sad, sick joke, but nonetheless, it is what happens in every courtroom, in every part of the country. I do believe that, and I've been told that by people that are in positions of government to know that. But anyway, ridiculous things like how many times have the dogs been walked, and in fact, this is really funny because at one point they said, "Oh my gosh, the dogs weren't even in that house during that particular week," and they said, "Well, he must have just been going outside gathering all the dog poop from other dogs and bringing it inside and putting it on the living room rug." And I thought, I mean, it's ludicrous. It's funny, but it's tragic that it's so funny, really. But the system can be manipulated, and that's the tragedy, because it isn't really the people that are doing it. They're only doing what they can get away with. And attorneys, they're only doing what they can get away with. It's the system. The entire system is broken. And even in terms of custody and visitation, children manipulate the system too. They learn. And so I remember hearing my one son said, "If you don't buy me this, I'm going to tell the judge that I had to sell drugs." And I said, "Why would you do something like that?" He said, "Because then I could prove that you're not a good parent, and you'd lose time with the other children." And I thought, that's really horrible. But you see, that is part of the way the system has been designed to work that way. And so it needs to be kind of rotted out from the inside out, really. And I actually, I saw this going on in not just my courtroom, but in all sorts of courtrooms throughout the building, whether it was even a civil case or family law or whatever, or criminal. People were just being destroyed just because of lawsuits, and children particularly were being destroyed because they were just being used as pawns. And so I wanted to scream. I was so insulted. My soul was so insulted. And I imagine if you had ever been in a position like that, I mean, with over 50% of all marriages ending in divorce, and custody litigation being such a profitable endeavor, people are actually, they're encouraged to start custody battles. And all that does is it just it creates more work for everyone, yes, and just destroys our children, and our children become wounded forever as a result of that. But I actually went to the government and I just said, I can't believe this is going on. And it's no, not just my case, but all around. And they said, "Oh, it's the way things have been since time immemorial. And it does need to be changed, but who's going to do it?" And so I thought, we need to raise awareness. And so they said, "Well, talk about it because you were on the inside and you do have a background in it. So talk about it and raise awareness." And so I did. And they said, "And tell people." So I did. I wrote a letter. Well, that whoever has been, whoever might have noticed, I've had a little bit of bad publicity, maybe just a little teeny tiny bit. Actually, it was like an avalanche, but it's because I wrote a letter and I said, "Look, what's going on with our legal system, and how can we mitigate the devastation and the destruction to families?" And then I was my ex got a gag. He gagged me, so I couldn't talk about it anymore. And then he sued me for defamation and switched letters. So I never was sued for the letter that I wrote because there was nothing wrong with the letter I wrote. It was the absolute truth. And in order to have a claim for defamation, it has to be false. So, but they actually switched the letters in evidence. So I was sued for a letter I didn't write. And then I had this $10 million judgment, which was the largest personal defamation judgment in the history of the country. And so it increases every year, with statutory interest of 10%. But my ex-husband has died. God took care of that one, because he got so many judgments against me that were just bogus. But and that's not to say that that's why he's dead. But I'm just saying that he couldn't collect on that. Although before he died, he did collect on a lot of it. No, it increased. So probably by now it would be, I don't know, 50 million. And actually, I remember one of my attorneys said, "Oh my gosh, this is the most ridiculous verdict I've ever heard. And in fact, by the time you're 80 years old, you'll owe the man you married, you'll owe him $500 million, and you did nothing wrong." So anyway, that was how that went. So let's see. Then after my father died, I had a condo on the beach in Clearwater Beach that my father bought me, and so then my ex-husband went after my inheritance, and so he got my sister and my son to join in together with him, and so then they started raping and pillaging my inheritance, and so that was kind of interesting, and changed the locks. I was on vacation and I came back and the locks were all changed, and my accounts were emptied, and so basically I became homeless like that. I went from being very rich to being very poor. Not even $20 in my account. So you see, sometimes when we think of our sole purpose, I realized that I wasn't a victim to all this. I mean, I guess at some point I felt like a victim, but really I had to see what was going on in order for me to speak about it, and in order for me to say, hey, this is really bad news. This has got to stop. How can we do something about it? We must do something about it. Because literally, it's not the pandemic that's killing the people. It is the interpersonal relationships we have, and the family issues, and the interpersonal issues that are just killing our society. Our people of all ages, they're wounding our children, or see that their parents are mortal enemies of one another. They see the corruption, they see the craziness, they see so many things, and so it just destroys our children. And then in court, when one person wins and has a big win, that means the loser has a big loss. Yeah. And so many people end up having addictions, whether it's to alcohol or drugs or sex or overeating or whatever the addiction is, and then there's the reputation. There's so much gossip, and oh, he cheated, she cheated, whatever. It's really bad PR, and it just destroys our people. And so again, not to get distracted by the details, but really the point is think about what your sole purpose is, because sometimes when you feel so beaten down because of things that have been injustices to you, well, maybe it had to happen that way so that you could kind of, it's like one more drop in that cup and it's going to spill over. Well, maybe you're getting to that point where you have to speak up about something. Because if you don't speak up about something that has affected you and has impacted your life, then who will? So it's like a miracle that we go through so much. And sometimes those things that we go through are just amazing blessings, because we're to open our mouth. We have a mouth and we have a voice. And even though I was gagged and I couldn't talk for a long time, whatever, maybe just the timing wasn't right at that point. But anyway, it's time to tell the truth now, and so I think that get into a little bit more of this later on this week. But sometimes we just have to do something about things that affect us. When it only takes one person to sue us, and that can change our life, overnight, in a negative way. And so anyway, I thank you for being here, and I wish that all of your dreams come true. And until we meet again, I love you.